Hello, this is the Bible in fewer words. We are Carol and Steve Wells. This is episode 31, Exodus chapters 16 through 18. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Carol.
So what happened last time?
Well, I think the Israelites began their exodus from Egypt, got across the Red Sea.
Oh, yeah?
And they were getting thirsty, and so Moses had to get them some water by throwing a tree in some bitter water and making it sweet.
Oh, that's right.
The waters of Marah.
Good memory.
Well, I just checked.
Okay, so chapter 16. The Israelites complained to Moses and Aaron about the lack of food. So first they didn't have any water, now they don't have any food.
There's going to be a lot of that, yeah. But you can see maybe why it's desert there. There's not much water or food to be had.
Yeah. The whole congregation said to them, "We wish to God that he had killed us in Egypt, where we sat by flesh pots and ate bread until we were full. Now you've brought us to this wilderness to kill us of hunger." Okay, a term there that I'm not familiar with is flesh pots.
Yeah, I don't. It doesn't mean much to me either. But I'm thinking it's like
A stew.
A big pot on a fire with meat in it.
Okay.
Moses said to the people, "God will give you flesh to eat in the evening, and plenty of bread in the morning. God has heard your complaints against him. Your complaints are against him, not against us." So Aaron spoke to the people, and the glory of the Lord appeared in a cloud.
The next evening, quails covered the camp, and in the morning, dew was on the ground. And when the people saw it, they said to one another, "This is manna." I imagine like little flakes of bread falling from the ground.
From the sky.
From the sky, yes.
Yeah, that's kind of how I imagine it too. It's hard to say what the author of this had in mind. There are a lot of speculations about what it might actually be.
You want to tell us about some?
Yeah, there's a particular species of insect, scale insect, that lives on the tamarisk trees that live in the Sinai. I suppose they're pretty rare, though. They probably have to be around some water. They're not just throughout the desert. But anyway, these insects secrete a sugary fluid that, when it dries, can be collected by people and eaten as food.
So I have a couple problems with that.
Yeah.
These people are in the desert and don't have any water.
Yeah.
So would there be a tamarisk tree around there?
It doesn't seem like it.
No.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, like, I've ridden my bike under trees some mornings, and then I get like this little...
Yeah.
A little sprinkle of something, and I think, oh, what is that?
Yeah.
And upon a little research, I see that maybe aphids are peeing on me.
It's the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and in fact, it's even the same insect order that we're talking about
Really?
here. Yes, the Hemiptera.
Well, I could never imagine like sticking my tongue out and collecting enough of it to do me any good.
Yeah, it's a big source of food for other insects, but I don't think it really amounts to too much
For humans. Okay. So they didn't have much, so I guess they just maybe considered anything something.
I guess in verse 16, Moses says to them, "This is the bread that God has given you to eat. Don't leave it until morning."
Okay. Well, first of all, it's so small. It seems like it would be hard to collect.
It doesn't have much of a shelf life, I guess. So you want to eat it right away. But some did. Some left it until morning, and it bred worms and stank, which made Moses angry.
So they were supposed to eat it that night.
Yeah.
Eat it quickly.
Yeah.
Moses said to them, "This is what God says. Don't gather the bread on the Sabbath."
Yeah, and this is the very first mention of the Sabbath in the Bible.
So presumably, if they leave it sit overnight, it's going to breed worms and stink. If that happens on the Sabbath, they're out of luck for food that day.
I think we're going to find that God's going to take care of the problem of the Sabbath.
Okay. The people did as Moses and God said, and the bread didn't stink or have any worms in it. Some of the people gathered on the seventh day, but they found nothing. I guess that's what happens.
Yeah,
You find
that's
it in
right.
there. God said to Moses, "How long will you ignore my commandments? On the 6th day, I gave you bread for 2 days. No man should go out to gather on the 7th day."
And Moses said, this is what God commands. Fill a pot with an omer of manna and keep it forever before God.
Well, that one's going to breed worms and stink.
You would think so, yeah. But I guess maybe not. Maybe that's special and it didn't.
Okay, so the word omer, I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I had to look that up. An omer,
thank you.
An omer is a unit of volume, which is a little bit less than a gallon, or about 4 liters, something like that.
So Aaron put a pot of manna before the testimony.
Yeah, the testimony would be the 10 Commandments, which they haven't got yet.
So they're going to wait a long time, so that manna is really going to be bad.
Yeah.
Okay. The children of Israel ate manna for 40 years. 40 years.
Yeah, and that's pretty much all they ate, I guess.
And that's how long they were in the desert there.
Yeah, and if it is this insect thing, it's pretty much sugar water. I don't really think it'd be very nutritious.
Yeah. Chapter 17. As the Israelites traveled from the wilderness of Sin to Rephidim, they had no water to drink. So they complained to Moses, saying, "Give us water to drink. Did you bring us out of Egypt to make us and our cattle die of thirst?" And then Moses turned and cried to God, saying, "What should I do to these people? They are almost ready to stone me to death."
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to think about. The people were so angry that Moses was worried they were going to stone him to death.
This is why he didn't want to take the job on to begin with.
Maybe so. God replied, "Take your rod and gather the elders. I'll stand on a rock. Then you smite the rock with your rod, and water will come out so that the people can drink." So Moses did that, and water came out of the rock. I guess God was standing on the rock, and Moses struck it with his rod, and water came out.
I hope he didn't hit God's toe. While the Israelites were in Rephidim, Amalek came to fight with them. Who's Amalek?
When they say Amalek, I
Yes.
think what they really mean is not Amalek himself. I think they mean the descendants of Amalek, the Amalekites.
Okay, and do they have a reputation?
Yes, throughout the Old Testament they're going to be hated, and in fact they still are. And we'll see this throughout the Old Testament. This is the first encounter that they have with the Amalekites.
Oh, so this is a first big fight.
Yeah, and there'll be a lot more. Mm-hmm.
And Amalek, he is a descendant of Esau. And God didn't like Esau.
God hated Esau.
Okay.
Yeah, and it says so in the Bible.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I guess God maybe hated his descendants as well. Just like Esau, his descendants became the Edomites, and they're also an enemy of Israel. Amalek, who is also a descendant of
Esau.
But maybe he creates his own little, his own
branch.
little branch, yeah. And there's the hated Amalekites.
Okay. So they're here ready to fight them.
Mm-hmm.
Moses said to Joshua,
and that's the first mention of Joshua, and we'll see him a lot throughout.
"Choose some men and go fight with Amalek. I'll stand on top of the hill with God's rod in my hand." God's rod in my hand.
All right.
So Joshua, he's going to stay on top of the hill. And what is he going to do? Watch the fight?
Well, I think we have to read on to find out. So Joshua fought with Amalek, while Moses, Aaron, and Hur stood on top of the hill. So they're just kind of watching. As long as Moses kept his hand up, the Israelites were successful in battle. But the second his hand fell, they got beat.
So Moses had to keep his hand with the rod in it up?
Yes, that's right.
All right.
But Moses, he's an old guy.
Yes.
And so his hands were heavy, so they set him on a stone and had Aaron and Hur hold up his hand. And they continued to hold up his hand until the sun went down.
I'm trying to imagine him sitting on a rock and his hand's like a V above his head like this with a rod in one hand.
Yeah.
And he just can't hold his hands up anymore.
Yeah.
He's got two guys, one holding up the right hand, one holding up the left hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
For hours and hours.
Right. And they did it until the sun went down, and Joshua killed Amalek and his people.
So it worked.
Did. Mm-hmm.
God was helping the Israelites fight the Amalekites.
Right. And that's the end of chapter 17.
Chapter 18. Sometime after Moses' wife Zipporah saved Moses when God tried to kill him, she returned to Midian. So this was a long time ago.
Right. Yeah, we had that whole episode where God tried to kill Moses.
And she saved Moses.
Him by circumcising, it
their
wasn't
son.
Very clear, but yeah, circumcising their son.
And then we didn't hear from her. We expect she went home with her dad.
Yeah, it was weird because it didn't say that she did, but apparently she did, because in the next verse, verse 2, it says, "And her father Jethro, the priest of Midian, brought her back to Moses, along with their sons, Gershom and Eleazar." And this is the first that we hear of the name of Eleazar, I believe.
I think so.
Before he was unnamed. They did mention sons, so he had more than one. And so we didn't know what son was circumcised back then or what. But Jethro brought Moses' family to him to meet
see him on this big adventure in the wilderness.
Right. So they came out to meet him, and then they all met at the mountain of God, where Moses bowed to Jethro and kissed him.
You think he kissed his wife?
It doesn't say so. It doesn't say he even greeted his wife, said anything to her or to his sons. And as far as we know, and this is the last time that his family, Zipporah and his two sons, are mentioned in the Bible. We don't know what happened to them, where they went. They probably went back with Jethro, but maybe never saw them again.
So it's possible he never sees his wife again.
It is.
Gee.
Likely, I would say.
So maybe she was really mad at him when she had to do that thing.
Maybe so. Maybe he was mad at her, but it just seems like their family, it's kind of, there's some problems in the family here. Moses doesn't seem to be much of a family man.
It doesn't sound like it. Okay, well, that's enough for today.
I think so, yeah.
All right, thank you for staying with us. And remember to talk to your friends about this episode or this series if you like it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye.